This black box right here is the mini
Retro Beast.
It's not the scary kind of beast, though. You know, the kind that eats your face while you sleep. It's the fun kind that has games on it. Retro games. It's probably the best retro game collection that I've ever seen. All set up and ready to rock. And it's definitely not going to eat your face while you sleep. Hello, I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Do you ever feel like the weight of the world is crushing your childhood delight right out of you? Like a frog's guts being forced through its eyeballs as it's slowly run over by a fat toddler on a big wheels? I feel like that, all the freaking time. And that's why I love retro games. Because even though I'm 40 and unemployed and there's 1,001 things I should be doing with my time to improve my life and move out of my mom's basement, those things are hard. Or annoying. And why would I do them when I could just play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 The Manhattan Project on the Nintendo instead? Life is short, you know? Which brings us to this. It's the mini
Retro Beast
by KrisCoolMod. It's a 4 terabyte hard drive that comes preloaded with an attractive front end to browse your games. All the emulators pre-configured and ready to rock. But the best part is that it comes packed with games. And unlike those cheap Chinese consoles and games drives that I've reviewed before, this one is made for and tailored to a North American audience. And I'm telling you, it's an amazing, organized, and complete collection that they've put together here. It also comes with stickers, so you can decorate it. I think I'll go with this Game Boy sticker. Yeah, that's fun. We're having fun now. And I need to mention it because I always get questions about this. Yes, you need a computer to use this. You need to run it on your Windows computer or laptop. The good news is that you don't need a high-end PC to play all of the older stuff that's on here. And even for higher-end stuff like PS3 and Xbox 360, any modest gaming PC will do the job, really. Before you get playing, there's a short setup procedure that you'll need to do. It's pretty simple. It only took me a few minutes. There's a wiki on the drive itself that explains it all step by step. And KrisCoolMod has a Discord server where you can ask questions if you need help. And they also offer downloadable updates, so basically all the support you could ever need. Once we've done the setup, all we need to do is start it up via the
Retro Beast
application on the drive. This opens up the front end, sort of a main menu. In here, we have several main categories. We have arcade games, console games, handheld games, pinball games, computer games, game manuals, game collections, and settings. So let's start with arcade. In here, we have several different sections, main sections for all the games, and then each of these other sections are just sort of playlists. And look at the background videos. Isn't that cool? So let's just go into MAME, and here you can see this gorgeous front end in all its glory. Each of the arcade games gets an arcade cabinet with the game video. You can browse through the games and see their actual arcade cabinets, which is so freaking cool. Look at that Afterburner cabinet. I love this kind of stuff. And within the game, I love how each game has its own unique bezel around the outside of the screen, and the scanline filter that makes it look like it's playing on an old CRT. This front-end package, this user experience, is one of the best parts of this whole setup. It makes playing retro games fun to have this level of immersion. As for the games list, well, it looks pretty darn extensive to me. There are 3,628 arcade games on here. And then if you want to play, for instance, a shmup game, then you could go to the shmups category and browse through the shmups. I really like having these categories. It's great for finding new games in a genre that you like. Let's move on to the next two sections, the consoles and the handhelds. We'll do them both together. And there is a ton of stuff on here. In consoles, we have all the old consoles, obviously, like NES, Super Nintendo, Sega, Atari, PS1, Nintendo 64, Saturn, Dreamcast. But there's also a bunch of stuff that we don't usually get on these emulation products. GameCube, PS2, PS3, Wii U, Xbox, and Xbox 360. And then in handhelds, we have all the lower end stuff like Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Gear, Nintendo DS. And then we also get PSP and freaking Nintendo Switch. And the best part is that it's all hand-picked and carefully set up, so it all just works. See, check it out. For the older stuff, the game lists are basically perfect, in my opinion. They have complete ROM sets for all the old games. 1G, 1R ROM sets, which means one game, one ROM, which means that you'll only get one ROM file for each game, with a North American English priority. The games all read great, obviously. The older Pixel systems have CRT filters applied, which again, I like to see. And if you don't like that, you could pull up the RetroArch options and change it. I tried a bunch of stuff from Game Boy, NES, Atari, Game Boy Advance, Super Nintendo, Sega, TurboGrafx-16, Jaguar. Everything worked amazing, as you would expect. Just the ROM collection alone is impressive here, but the fact that it's all packaged up so completely brings this mini
Retro Beast
to the next level. I've been waiting for exactly this type of product. It's like the perfect retro emulation collection. And the earlier 3D systems were the same. Great ROM lists, all configured perfectly, and there's so many freaking games on here. There's 1,800 PS1 games, for instance, including the multi-disc games like the Final Fantasy games. 300 Nintendo 64 games, so that's a complete ROM set. 287 Sega Saturn games, including the multi-disc games. So again, a complete ROM set. 308 Dreamcast games, again, another complete ROM set. So for like everything before the year 2000, you're gonna get every retro game ever made here. And then even higher than that, we're into the GameCube era. 638 GameCube games. That's nearly every single GameCube game. It's not common to get a good GameCube list, and this is basically the most amazing GameCube list that you could ever want. They are configured with Dolphin, and they start right up, nice and quick, and run without issue. If you like GameCube, then you're gonna love this thing. And we have 70 PS2 games. So not the hugest PS2 set. There is tons of amazing games on here though. I think you'll be really happy with this set. Actually, speaking of the game lists, I should mention that the list of what's on this drive is publicly available if you want to see for yourself what's on here. I'll include a link to that in the description below. 44 original Xbox games. So not all the Xbox games, but again, it's a good set. These are running through the Zemu emulator. And I know from experience that this emulator can be kind of fiddly to install and get working with the correct controls, but here it is all set up for you, so you don't need to do anything. Just get into the game and play. And I shouldn't neglect the handhelds. 2,102 Nintendo DS games. That's more Nintendo DS games that you could freaking play in a lifetime. And I don't mind playing them through emulation either. You can use the thumbstick or your mouse as a cursor for touchscreen stuff. They are actually surprisingly comfortable to play through emulation. 362 PSP games. Not a complete ROM set, but it's a great selection of games. And PSP emulates so well with the standalone PPSSPP emulator. It's set to scale to the native resolution of your display, and this system runs well even on lower end hardware. There's no 3DS games on here, which I found curious. However, we do have Nintendo Switch. I'm not going to be able to show you, or the Nintendo ninjas will come cut off my butt, but we have 25 really good Switch games on here, including that new game that everyone's playing these days. You know the one. 25 Xbox 360 games, not a ton, but keep in mind that these games were on DVD, so they're really big. Some of my favorite Xbox 360 games are on here, including one of my all-time favorite games, Red Dead Redemption. These are set to use the Xenia emulator, and they work great, and they look great running on modern hardware. There are no regular Wii games on here, but we have 27 Wii U games. And these games actually emulate amazing. Wii U is a great system for emulation. They're set up to use the Zemu emulator, and they're perfectly buttery smooth, upscaled to your monitor's resolution. For PS3, we have 28 games. 28 full games. These aren't like downloadable games. These are full disc games. They're set up to use the RPCS3 emulator, and they ran perfect. I don't have a monster gaming PC here, but this is running so well. They look freaking awesome on my display. And for PS3, they have a separate section for the PSN games, the downloadable PS3 games. and we get 185 on here. I love these smaller downloadable games on the PS3. Here's some NBA Jam. If you have more than one USB controller, you can play this with your buddy or your mom if you don't have a buddy, as long as you don't cry when she whoops your ass. So that's the main section, but I wanted to quickly touch on the other 4 sections. I'll show you the settings quick because there's not a ton in here. There's some settings. You can change the skin of the front end and you can toggle a few options for the emulation like the CRT scanline effects. Next we have pinball. Now, those who know me well know how much I love me some pinball. I'm gonna buy some pinball machines someday when I'm a YouTube millionaire. Oh, and did I mention I have a Patreon page linked below? So in here are 3 things. There's Pinball FX 2 and 3, but what I really like is this retro pinball playlist. I love me some retro console pinball. Devil's Crush, Alien Crash, Revenge of the Gator. There's quite a few in here that I didn't even know about. That's why I love these playlists on this setup. And then there's this computer section for the retro computer systems like Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64. I didn't have any of these and I don't really check them out often, but I tried a few games and they did work. So if you have nostalgia for these old computer systems, then you can go nuts. And then finally, this section here is game manuals. Man, you remember when games used to come with manuals? Like your mom would drive you to the mall to buy a new game, and then you'd leave the store and read the back of the box, and then in the car on the way home, you'd open the box and you'd have this little book that got you all excited about the game. It gave you some flavor text, read about the controls, maybe a few tips and tricks, maps. It's a lost art, the art of the game manual. If you like to nerd out about retro stuff, you're gonna love this section. And that's it, I guess. There's so much on here. I could never show you everything in one video. But what do I think of this thing is the question. Well, it's nothing short of the best retro game collection that I've ever seen. The ROM sets for all of the old systems are perfect. Complete North American focused ROM sets without a bunch of bullcrap. And even for the early 3D systems, we have more or less complete collections of PS1, Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast. For the higher end stuff, you won't get complete ROM sets, not on this 4 terabyte mini beast, but you do get a freaking ton of stuff. Nearly every GameCube game, a ton of PS2, and Xbox, and PS3, and PSP, and Wii U, and Xbox 360, and Nintendo Switch. KrisCoolMod sells a 96 terabyte version of this product. 96 freaking terabytes. If you really want every freaking retro game ever made. Dear Lord, I can't imagine what 96 terabytes of games looks like. My favorite part of this build isn't the games list though. It's the way that it's set up, both from how you browse through the games to how they look when you're playing them. It's such a fun way to play these old games. And the icing on the cake is that it all runs so well. I didn't encounter a single system that had issues. No games that wouldn't launch. I'm not trying to sell this to you or tell you how to spend your money. I'm not sponsored and I don't get a cut of the sales. I know a good product when I see it. I'll include a link to this in the description below. And that brings us to the end. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What do you think of this thing? And what about that 96 terabyte drive? Do you want to see me review that one? Maybe KrisCoolMod will send me that one to try out someday. So get subscribed for that, I guess. Anyways, thanks for watching. Click the thumbs up button if you like the video. Check out my Discord server if you do that sort of thing. You can come chat with a bunch of fun TechDweebs, including yours truly. And that's it for me. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.